with my great privilege and honor to introduce Gina Hill. Gina?
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank all the members of the audience here today for their focus on mental health, especially as it relates to soldiers and veterans. During the month of May, Mental Health Awareness Month, I was invited to speak on Capitol Hill to share our family story, which I will share with you today. I would also like to thank all military leadership, particularly General Corelli, Lieutenant General Schoonmaker, and Brigadier General Williams for their continued support of our wounded, ill, and injured soldiers. It's important that we all understand that it takes an army of people devoted to this cause to influence the policy and healthcare service changes needed for our veterans and our caregivers. Ongoing support for our veterans and their families is critical. 1 in 5 of our service members come home with PTSD. They are not the only ones impacted by this. Their families are impacted as well. As you know, I'm the wife of a severely injured soldier. While the majority of Alan's physical or visible wounds have healed, our family still struggles daily with the psychological wounds. Oftentimes, these are called the invisible wounds, but I have a hard time calling them that, for they are very visible to anyone who spends any amount of time with him. These psychological wounds greatly affect not only the soldier, but the entire family. My husband's triggers are now triggers for myself, as well as our 2 children, Drayson, who is 8, and Mikhail, who is 15. In the rare times we are away from my husband, we are constantly on high alert for his triggers. It's next to impossible for us to turn that off. The impact of my husband's PTSD on our family was immediate. When we left Walter Reed, Drayson was 4 and in preschool. We'd been home a couple of months, and it was one of our first trips to the VA, and Drayson joined us. Alan, my husband, and a retired staff sergeant, has problems in new locations, and especially long hallways. A few steps into the VA, my 4-year-old son saw the physical changes in Alan, grabbed his hand, and began to lead him down the hallway, saying, "Don't worry, Daddy, he's just a doctor. Don't worry, Daddy, that's just a door slamming." I cannot hide my husband's illness. I don't have to explain it. My children live it every day. Since the age of 4, my son has been a caregiver to his father. In an Army Wounded Warrior blog, my son offered this advice to other kids of wounded soldiers. If your dad or mom has flashbacks, do not be afraid. It will be okay. My children are caregivers first and kids second. They are well rehearsed in PTSD, calling 911, and explaining why their dad has a service dog, why he isn't at many of their events, and why he sometimes acts really weird. They also have to understand that plans are never set in stone and are always contingent on their dad's current mental state. Even things they have their heart set on sometimes doesn't happen when they expect or want it to. Any friends they want to have over to our house also have to know the deal with their dad, and that sometimes things quickly get very chaotic at our house. They never really know what to expect next and have to be very flexible with their needs and desires. These aren't things that most kids have to worry about. When people thank my husband for his service, I just wish they'd stop and recognize the sacrifice of our children. They have given a lot. They served and continue to every day. Although I used to teach full-time, I'm now a full-time caregiver for my husband. One of our biggest fears is that my soldier will not be considered injured enough to qualify for the benefits of the newly passed caregivers bill. While my husband is physically capable of dressing, transferring, toileting, and bathing independently, he still requires supervision and reminders to perform these tasks daily. Without these reminders and assistance, most of these tasks are left undone. Due to the severity of his dissociations, my husband is unable to drive or to be left alone. Recently, we had to sell our home due to the external environmental triggers that sent him running to the middle of the street, completely unresponsive to anything outside of his head, or ducked in a corner taking cover for hours. Many of these instances ended with me having to call 911 for assistance, 15 times in a span of 2 years to be exact. Yet he is not injured severely enough to qualify for much of the assistance available to the more physically injured warriors. We do not qualify for housing assistance that would have allowed us to move away from the rock quarry a mile from our old house that blasts every day and makes him think there are incoming mortars. or the railroad tracks 100 meters from our old house that cause a lot of loud noise and vibrations that he interprets as some type of danger. Instead, we simply put our faith in God and in our belief that He will provide. Currently, we also do not qualify for any type of respite care that would allow me to leave the house for errands or a job. All of these things we get denied for because they can't see His whims, and this just fuels his PTSD, the depression, and the self-harm feelings that go along with it. Time and time again, we have come to realize that the whole system doesn't know what to do with these guys. I've been told by someone in the system who is there to help that most soldiers with PTSD, like my husband's, just end up in jail, homeless, or dead. This just is not an acceptable attitude. Last summer, my husband attempted suicide. We went to the Kansas City VA, where he was admitted for a week. They directed us to the Topeka VA, which has a PTSD program. TRICARE wouldn't cover this treatment because it's the VA's responsibility. As I was sorting out the paperwork and how to get my husband into a local program, each day he struggled to hold it together, telling me, "I don't think I can handle another day." Each day I feared for his life. He needed help. He wanted help. He sought help, but he was denied help. Finally, on my own, I found an inpatient treatment facility called the Pathway Home in California. We flew across the country last September to admit him. He was there until August 1st, even though he graduated from the program last March. There were huge concerns about him coming home to our old house with all the environmental triggers surrounding us. Instead of sending him home to a home that was not safe for him, they allowed him to stay there until we were able to secure a safe home for our family to live together again. On July 31st, we received a knock on the door that answered these prayers for our family. This knock was from the crew of Extreme Makeover Home Edition, telling us that they were building us a house. And at the end of that week, they were bringing us all home together as a family. We have now been in our new house 3 weeks, and it's so incredible having us all get back together again in a safe home. Built especially around Alan's needs. It is also reassuring to know that whatever may happen down the road, we have the stability of a safe home. Struggles I face specifically as a spouse of a warrior suffering with PTSD are many. It is difficult watching the person you love fighting to get back to the person they were before the war, because they do remember what they used to be like. They just can't figure out how to get back to that person. We have worked very hard to focus on the best he can be now, not who he was. Every part of him is different, and when I say every, I mean every. With that being said, it is extremely difficult being married to someone who is completely different than when you married him. There are times that I see glimpses of the man I married, but they are few and far between. I'm not sure whether these glimpses are a blessing or a curse. As a spouse, we have to make a choice as to whether we are going to learn to love them with their PTSD and TBI, or whether we can handle that task. Some of us just aren't able to handle that, but I am absolutely thankful that I am one that can. Our worries are great and can be as simple as dealing with going out in public as a family in any situation. Just going to a restaurant or a grocery store can turn into a huge ordeal. We have to be constantly prepared for anything and be able to stay calm and handle the situation for our spouse, our family, and many times the public. It is not an easy road. While we do have many day-to-day struggles, we have had plenty of blessings along this journey as well. One of these came to us from an organization called Puppies Behind Bars. They provided Alan with a service dog specifically trained to help him manage his PTSD and TBI. There are many tasks Frankie assists him with, but one of the biggest is her ability to bring him back from his dissociations. What used to end in a call to 911 now ends with him coming back to reality with her kissing his face. She has given all of us much more confidence to go out in public and to be active in life. She is a comfort to all of us because we know she has his back. Another blessing Alan has received is Emma, his electronic medication management assistant. He calls his pill ATM. Emma has made him more capable of managing his medications without as much help from me, which makes him feel a little more control of his own life. Currently, the system is only available for active duty service members as far as insurance goes, but InRange is working diligently to get it approved through the VA. We have gotten help along the way through our Army Wounded Warrior Program advocate and local organizations, but greater attention and efforts are needed for those with debilitating mental illnesses, especially our service members with PTSD. I don't share our story today for sympathy. I share it because it's my way to ensure people better understand that PTSD is real and to reduce the stigma associated with it. Many people fear what they do not understand. The more we know, the more we understand, the more we can help. Alan is a hard worker, a patriot, a veteran, a father, a husband, and should not be defined or limited by his mental illness. My older son, Mikhail, bluntly put it in a blog this way: just because he is different now than before, he's not crazy. Alan and I know that if we want things to change, we have to lead it. We hope that by sharing our personal struggles and accomplishments, we will shed some light on things that he fixed and share the blessing we have received that others may not know about. And more importantly, can hopefully make things better for those who follow. As my 8-year-old son said last summer at an Army event, my dad fought in the war to save the world. And to that I add, it's our turn to fight for him and the thousands like him with various mental illnesses. Again, thank you all for allowing me to tell our story. And I also want to tell my husband thank you for having the courage to be here today. And for being an example of strength and courage to not only myself, but to our boys. We love you and are so thankful to have you finally home.
Thank you so much, Gina, for that moving and informational testimony.